This is the stuff dreams are made of. I'm writer-collector Ryan Condal.
And I'm writer-collector Dave Mandel, and you're listening to the original movie prop collecting podcast, brought to you by Heritage Auctions, HA.com. They just finished up a whole wonderful giant entertainment auction, and keep your eyes peeled this fall for the Guillermo del Toro. I don't know if it's Treasures from... What's the name of his house? What's it called?
Yeah, Bleak House.
Bleak House. I don't know if it's Treasures from Bleak House.
Maybe it's creepy enough. I feel like
Signature
it's got to be
Bleak House.
Artifacts.
The Horrors of Bleak House. That's what it should be. The Horrors of Bleak House.
That's good.
But it's the Bleak House auction is coming up,
I like that.
and we also know that the big television auction from it's the Batman collection and a lot of 60s and 70s stuff as well is coming up. And a whole bunch of other stuff. So keep your eyes peeled at HA.com, Heritage Auctions, and also, as always, their comic art auctions and other collectibles fields. So thank you, Heritage, our proud sponsors. Hi, Ryan. How are you?
Hi, Dave. I haven't seen you in a while. Just kidding.
This is we're doing. It was like we recorded Sunday, Monday, and then it's gonna be Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
But this is a good show. This is a really good one. This is a really fucking good show for us. Like, I don't even recognize this show. Like, I keep thinking it's some other podcast of some sort. This is a big coup.
Yeah. This is gonna be the one that really breaks us out, Dave. This is gonna be the one that's talked about in Vulture and really hits the mainstream. We're going viral.
I think we're gonna get to like 300 total listeners. So
rustle up the kids
yeah.
and get them talking about it on the TikTok.
Yeah, as Dave Letterman would say, wake the kids up. And yeah.
What's new?
What is new in props since yesterday? It's funny. We're actually recording this basically a day before the Heritage Auctions start. So I've definitely been talking to, it's a funny thing.
Yeah.
And again, it is part of the collecting world. I'll be able to tell you later on. And by the way, possibly the way order will work, you may know I won or lost before you hear this, because you'll hear why we're going to delay this a little bit. But anyway, so, I'm talking to two other collectors that are very interested in the Excalibur art by Bob Peak. And we're sort of all hemming and hawing about what we would really pay.
What's your number?
And who might back down if one person is a little bit higher than the others. And so it's always interesting. It's always a fun dance there. It's one guy I know very well and one guy I know kind of well. So it's not impossible, but it's always a very funny thing as like a couple of days before the auction, you start getting those kind of, hey, are you interested in the Excalibur? And it's like, yeah, no, you heard me say on a podcast, I'm going to be bidding on it. So yeah, I am interested in it. I wasn't saying that for fun, and trying to figure that out. And then just the ongoing, I've been making an effort, I know it's the saga of the condo, which is I've been trying just, more piles, more new piles. I will also tell you, I've got a couple of collectible things, brought to you by Heritage at hakes.com that are in there that I threw in there. Some stuff that it's not exactly Heritage's area. So again, maybe it will be someday, but, again, just interesting odds and ends. But the cleaning continues. I don't know what else to say. That's it for me, but that's what's been going on. A lot of, pre-auction, I don't know, jiggering.
Yeah. Curating.
Yeah. Curating, and also, like I said, these like sort of conversations and whatnot.
Yeah.
All very interesting. And dare I say, San Diego Comic-Con coming up very quickly, quicker than I quite have realized.
Yeah. I'm
and
very
so
sad.
I'm
very,
trying
very
to
sad
figure
to
we'll miss you
year.
very much. Although it's making my life easier in that I think I'm getting out of there as quick as I can. I'm thinking now, with you not there and some other people not there, I think I'm going to go down Wednesday and either come back like Friday evening or Saturday morning, but skip the weekend. I'm sort of hoping. I'm hoping the COVID positives start on Saturday, and I'll be in my car on the way back. I guess we'll see. But we have COVID is starting to pop up back out here, and we also have England really likes its medieval plagues. We had the
louses
first case right
in the house earlier this year, which is nits or lice.
Yep.
It's a big problem out here, but you just think of them as louses, which is definitely a medieval condition. And Dave, hand, foot, and mouth disease is back.
That was a biggie at at our preschool back in the day.
But with the adults.
Adults. Oh,
yes,
no. It was all kids back then.
Yeah.
And one year, I'll be talking more about the preschool later, as it turns out. But one year for Halloween, there had been a giant, basically from like the school had started, at the end of August, and all of September was hand, foot, and mouth disease. And so my Halloween costume for the preschool Halloween party, I kind of took just a shirt like this and hung some like rubber hands, rubber feet, and chattering teeth, and I was hand, foot, and mouth disease. And the head of the preschool did not enjoy that at all, and yet kind of did. Yeah.
Kind of did. Yeah.
Hand, foot, and mouth disease.
And then threw you out for your T-shirt, as we'll learn later.
Exactly. I was going to say, I thought you were going to bring up, I believe has been reported today somewhere, and I didn't know, I thought maybe you were going to say it was England. I don't know where it was, but there is a case of bubonic plague somewhere that was diagnosed like today.
Buboes are back, yeah.
So you can Google bubonic plague.
Make it happen.
I'll do my own research, please. I don't want the vaccine for the bubonic plague. I think it's bullshit. I think I'm going to take some vitamins. I think it's going to be fine. Yeah.
Don't tell me whether I should be sleeping with rats or not. I can do what I want in my own house.
I do think though that it could be a good marketing crossover for House of the Dragon. I feel like rats and bubonic plague are very Westeros, right? Kind of.
Very, very much so. Yeah. There were lots of plagues, lots of fictional plagues written into the text of Westeros. We had a bunch of in my previous show, Colony, in the writers' room. We would always make up these like made up TV shows that sometimes were just like a funny title, and then we would have to pitch the show around it, like Final Destination Wedding. The guy runs away from his wedding, and then the wedding won't let him not get married. And one that we always laughed about was Medieval Plague Doctor, and it's one of those like medical procedural shows, but it's in medieval times, and it has to do with Medieval Plague Doctor. And just at the end of the episode, everybody just dies.
Well, have you ever seen the old Steve? No. But have you ever seen?
We tried all the prayers and the weird rituals, and we burned your wife at the stake for being a witch, and it just seems like you're still going to die if you're hangnail. I'm very sorry.
You are far too young, but if you do a look on the internet for it's an old Steve Martin sketch that they did in the early days of SNL called Theodoric Barber of York, and he was a medieval barber, and I guess in those days barbers were the doctors too or something, and so it's basically
the barber pole. That's because they used to wrap the bloodied rags around the pole.
There you go.
And that's why it's the red and the.
And the sketch is basically people coming in like, my legs have been chopped off, and it'll be like, well, you need a good bleeding, but I am bleeding. Well, we'll do a good bleeding, and it's just patient after patient dying. And there's often Steve Martin in that very Steve Martin way, kind of going, hold on a minute, who's the barber here? And anyway, I highly recommend Theodoric Barber of York.
I'm good.
You will love.
Where can you like? I've been reading the Lorne Michaels book. Welcome to Plague Talk here, by the way, on the Stuff Dreams Are Made Of. I've been reading the Lorne Michaels book, really enjoying it. I want to go back because everybody's SNL is the SNL that they grew up with in middle school and high school. For me, it's the very late '80s through the sort of mid '90s was my kind of era. But I've never seen the first 2-3 seasons, like the early before Lorne quit the show. Where do I go watch those? How do I
it's
watch
funny.
full episodes of that show?
At some point, they used to have them on Comedy Central, but they were edited down. They were cut down to an hour. I think they often lost the music, and they took really good sketches out to make them an hour. Like sometimes they took the more interesting, odd later sketches out. So not really what you want. And then at some point there was like an SNL app that I feel like you could watch stuff, but I'm not sure how complete even that was. So I honestly don't know where you find the full old shows. They used to be available. You could buy video cassettes of like the early seasons.
Yeah, I wonder if you can go buy them digitally. I'll check
I don't know. I'm sure they've got to be out there, but
I've never seen the first episode. I've seen the opening sketch. Obviously,
I want to feed your fingertips to the Wolverines.
Fingers to the Wolverines.
And those early episodes they're tough. I mean, they're not. They're so different than what the show becomes. But when the show finds its rhythm in those first, those first 5 seasons, although I mean, just some incredible stuff. There also used to be these great best ofs that they would sometimes do, like even the best of like the hosts. So there would be like a best of Buck Henry, who was like multiple time host.
Multi-host,
yeah. And God, those were good. God, there was one sketch that was always him about, it was like Uncle Roy, and he was a pedophile that would come babysit for like these two little girls. I mean, like just stuff that it's hard to imagine, but it was so funny. And he was always in the samurai sketches, and he's in that very famous.
You couldn't do either today.
Do you remember Lord and Lady Douchebag? Is that something you've ever seen? No. It's a French court, it's a party, and people are arriving, and of course it's everybody's like, it starts off like the Earl of Sandwich, and it'll be like, what's new, Earl? Like, and it's like, well, I invented something, whatever interesting, and then it'd be like someone else, and then it would be like Lord and Lady Douchebag, and it would just anyway, I'm not doing it credit, just go and check it out, but really worthwhile, and probably fun as you are reading the book and kind of jumping through it. I have the book sitting here. Susan Morrison is a friend of mine, and she's been working on that book for a million years. I mean, I think I got interviewed.
Yes, your name dropped. I
got interviewed for that book, like honestly, like in 2016 or 17. That's how long she was working on it.
Well, it's a fantastic book. It's really fantastic. I'm about a little less than halfway into it. I'm fascinating, especially the early days, which I just knew nothing about. For mine, what's new in props, I'm going to be very frustrating. And maybe we can talk about this at some future date. But I'm trying to work. I'm working on a private deal.
Which I feel like I do want to like. Right, exactly. But I do feel like it. And look, you can say anything you want to say about it. I do believe if we know it's happening, we can get to maybe not so much. I mean, what the deal is will be interesting, but also.
We can reenact the discussion.
The machinations of how it came together, which I think is the fascinating part of it.
Yeah,
because it has multiple people, which is it's interesting. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's me trying to upgrade something that I already have, and we always struggle with that because it's it's not as desperate, I think, as the thing that it's missing from your collection. But I really, this is something I've really wanted to upgrade, and I think this is
maybe that's the topic.
Yeah, upgrading.
Maybe we do a show on upgrading props, and maybe that's a part of it, or maybe that's the what's new in props connected to that.
The two of us. Because maybe win or lose. Maybe succeed or fail. We can talk about it. Because it's
definitely something that has come up with other auction listings in the past. We've talked about things in our own collections. Do I want to upgrade? Yes, but what do I want to spend on that upgrade? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe that's a topic for another day.
Yeah. I like it. So it's sort of very early days, but we're trying, it's a complicated thing, and we're trying to go in with an offer, and I've been talking to you about it and sort of, how do you see this? And, if I sell the other thing, like, I got it years ago, and what's the delta, on it now that it's this, but obviously I'm upgrading, so the new one is better in theory. And it's just a lot of, kind of a lot of moving parts.
Right. Well, I think the deal itself is an interesting topic. I think sort of the notion of upgrading is an interesting topic. I think the notion, and maybe this is connected, but I think the notion of that this is a multi-person deal is sort of interesting, as opposed to you in an auction house or you and one person. And I do think it's also, it's also connected with, as you're thinking about this, of like, again, back to like what you might de-ascension, which is different than what I do, because you have a smaller, tighter collection. Yeah. So there's almost 4 topics in there.
Yeah.
And speaking of 4.
Oh, good one. Let's do it. I was going to go upgrade. This is a major podcast upgrade today.
That too.
And boy, did the Fantastic Four just get a major upgrade. But man, what a segue. We're just professional broadcasters now.
If you listen to season 1, we couldn't do shit like this.
The fact that the Ringer hasn't made an offer on this podcast yet it just blows my mind.
I know. I think they're jealous. That's what I think.
What are they doing? That's really it. It's just their own jealousy has caused them to be very short-sighted. This is a missing niche in the Ringer network. Very excited tonight. Matt Shakman has become a good friend, and we've known each other for a couple of years. We were kind of sort of brought together by a person who is one of our favorite editors, Nona Kodai, who worked on Colony, and Nona ended up working with Matt, I think, first on WandaVision, I want to say. I don't know if it was The Great or WandaVision first, but she's worked with Matt a bunch. She's now worked on Fantastic Four with him. Again, she's I will say she's my favorite American editor. How about that?
Love
her. And I adore Nona. She has very good taste in people and talented people. And she put me together with Matt when he was coming out here to do Fantastic Four. So we had known each other. We had sort of
to London to make the movie.
I moved to London. Matt came out here to stay for a little while he was making the movie. 5 years as you moved to London, more than 5 now. Thank you. And Nona hooked us up because she said you guys would be kind of kindred like souls, and we got together a few times. We hung out. I saw him when he was in at Comic-Con last year doing the tease for Fantastic Four. Now we are literally a year later. He's about to release the movie. He very kindly invited me out to set. I was reunited with a old friend of mine, Pedro Pascal, on the set, and we got to just look at each other and just be like, "This is insane." And he was going, "This is insane. You're working on Game of Thrones." And I'm like, "You're fucking Pedro Pascal. What are you talking about?" And walk all the sets, which we'll talk about on the show. But what a coup for the podcast to be able to bring him on here in the heat of the release of Fantastic Four. Matt has directed on a million things, but most recently, The Great. He's done WandaVision. His work on WandaVision in the sort of greater Marvel universe got him in the director's chair.
Yeah, I think led directly. But by the way, Fantastic Four, something like 40 plus episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which I sort of always forget about, but a huge number of those, which is
started
wonderful.
Life as a child actor, as we'll learn. I mean, Matt has really run around the block quite a bit, and he's as you'll hear, just a great human being, supremely talented, and hopefully this is the beginning of like kind of a long run for him doing Marvel movies and these big genre things, because you can tell how much he loves it and loves the stuff, and he comes at it with a little bit of a collector eye, which I think always makes the stuff in the movie a little bit more interesting. And you'll hear him talk tonight about the sort of design aesthetic that he wanted to bring into this, and it's very interesting to hear about. Anyway, it's really great to have him. Dave's going to make fun of me on the other side of this for a lame introduction, but here that was a good introduction.
That was a heartfelt introduction, but I'm not sure I don't know if it has excitement, but okay, fine, fair enough. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, oh my God, it's so exciting. Here we go. All right, well, here we go. Let's bring him on. Matt Shakman.
That was the worst intro ever.
It's seamless, Dave. Just wait until you hear the intro.
We literally have the director of the Marvel movie in studios right now, Fantastic Four. We've never had a guest like this ever, and I know you're sort of thinking like, well, maybe it'll be on the A side.
I did it on the other side. Just wait.
Not a lot of energy there. No,
just wait until you hear the episode.
You should storm off, Matt, right now. Just fucking storm off. This is unacceptable.
Like Adam Driver on Terry Gross.
Nope.
Gone.
Not what I wanted to be answering. Yeah. Matt, thank you so much for coming. This is very, very fun.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
And amazingly kind of you and generous with your time. I have a 20% sense of what you're going through right now in your life in the lead up to promotion of a gigantic studio summer tentpole made for Marvel Studios. So the fact that you take time out to talk to our audience is much appreciated, my friend.
No, well, I'm a longtime listener, and by
the way, we know that fact, and that blows our minds, and we have questions. We have a lot of questions about that too.
No, it's
we have
an
a
honor.
number of better podcasts to recommend for you. Also, if you can hang around offline.
I do feel like we're going to ask you questions about Fantastic Four that, in a perfect world, nobody else is asking you.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see.
I'm banking on it.
Let's set that as the bar.
So question one, what is Pedro really like? Has anyone asked you that? Yeah.
There's that great New Yorker cartoon. Have you seen it? Where it's like, a woman's laying on her therapist's couch and she says, my worldview depends on, is Pedro Pascal as nice as he seems?
Exactly.
Which like made it into a New Yorker cartoon, which is fantastic.
Yes. Yes. Two of the three of us, Dave, have worked with.
That's right.
Mr.
I have
Pedro
not.
Pascal.
I have never. Yeah.
Yeah.
I look forward to it. Yeah.
He was a delight 13 years ago, and I believe he is still a delight today.
He is indeed.
I think this joke works. He's just agreed to star in some of my home movies because he's in everything, right? There's a joke for you. Yeah.
Yep.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, do you have a Mandalorian helmet? You could always just make your own Pedro Pascal.
I know, but that would also be the question is if I had one, I feel like I would really want to know it was one of the ones where he took it off because obviously there are times he ain't him. Yeah. And so I would really want to know that it was one of those, and I'm not sure. I mean, obviously there's screen matches to be had, but that would be probably a taller order, dare I say.
I think season 2, he wore the suit a lot, even when he wasn't taking it on and off.
Right.
And then Brandon Wayne wears it a lot, who is actually John Wayne's grandson or something.
That's kind of neat.
Something incredible. I think that's a true fact. I hope that's true. Yeah. I think that's what he
let's
told
just
me.
make it true. I like it.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
So Matt, you are a listener of the show. How the fuck did that happen? Let's start with that. Let's just literally, how the fuck, because we have so few listeners, the fact that you're one of them is delightful to us, but also just how? Why?
I'm pretty
Why
sure.
Why are you listening to us? Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Kevin Feige was the one who told me about it first.
That is insane.
Maybe.
Yeah. Just insane. Yeah.
I think so.
That's wild. That's wild.
But you know, I've known Ryan for a few years, and then got to meet you, Dave, through Ryan. So I listen because I also love the stuff you guys talk about, and I love deep dives into Darth Vader helmets and Han Solo guns and all this kind of stuff. It's great.
Are you a collector in your forget about movie props, which we'll get to in a minute? Like, are you just in your life, whether it was baseball cards, stamps, whatever? Is that something that is a part of your life?
It has been, yes. So I was a baseball card collector until the fires here in LA burned up my entire collection, unfortunately.
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Including my 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle.
Oh, sorry.
The pride and joy of my life. But no, I do collect. And, I was, as a kid, I was obsessed with monster makeup. And like so many people, I wrote a letter to Dick Smith way back in the day. And it's actually on my wall right here behind me. That's my Dick Smith letter.
The Dick Smith letter survived. That's excellent. I'm glad
that actually made it into my office, so it survived. But he took me on, and I was a student of his, like many others, like Rick Baker or J.J. Abrams or Guillermo del Toro. And every Sunday, I would send in whatever prosthetics I was working on, and he would tell me how it was terrible and it could be better. And it was wonderful. He was great. But he also introduced me to.
There was like a kit, right? You could order like he had like a thing he would sort of sell you, like the at-home like lessons, so to speak, or it was some version of that.
Eventually, it became very formalized, and he had like a big old.
This was the early days.
This was early, and he was sort of trying it out. So he would send me chapters of things that he'd been writing.
Interesting.
But it was great. He was an incredibly generous guy. But he introduced me to Caglione and Drexler, who were these makeup artists who did Dick Tracy. And so I got to work on Dick Tracy and started collecting sort of movie props from Dick Tracy. So I have like a few of the prosthetics and sort of life masks and things that I got to work on when I was doing that.
That's John Caglione, right?
Yeah, so John ended up going into makeup. He did the Joker for Heath Ledger and a lot of other great things.
But believe it or not, in 1992
SNL.
and 3, he overlapped with me at SNL, and he was the best guy in the world. However, at some point, he had a different name in his head for me, and I actually turned it into a Seinfeld episode. There's an episode later. It's with Elaine where it's called the Susie, where there's a woman working at Peterman that keeps calling her Susie and is convinced her name is Susie. And John was the sweetest guy in the world, but at some point, and I can't remember what the name was, it was like I was Max. And then I was just, he must have known a Max, and I didn't correct him the first time, and then I just went 2 years without ever correcting him because he was such a good guy. And when we did when Heston came and we did a full Planet of the Apes cold opening, he was in seventh heaven. He was glorious. He was such a good guy. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
No, that's great. No, he was a wonderfully generous guy. I learned so much from him, and his partner at the time, Doug Drexler, was a similarly wonderful guy. And then they ended up splitting up after they did, Dick Tracy and a few other movies for The Boys, and I can't remember what else they were doing. Doug went and became a key member of Star Trek for years.
Sure.
I can't remember if he was visual effects or what his official title was, but anyway, he ended up working as, I think, an illustrator, concept designer in Star Trek, where he was really happy. So I started collecting stuff there, and I actually Planet of the Apes.
At this point in your life, are you an actor also? Are you a kid actor too? Or were you thinking about the effects world as a career or anything of that too? Sorry, and then get back to Planet of the Apes. Sorry.
But that's actually a great segue, because I was a kid actor. And so right around the same time, I ended up being cast in this movie so I was 12 or 11, I can't remember, that was being directed by Tom Berman. And Tom Berman was a makeup effects artist who had been John Chambers number 2 on the original Planet of the Apes. And he had done a lot of great movies, including The Goonies and, many others. But so he was making a film and I was in it, and I was so excited because I got to spend time at Tom Berman's studio got to see him make all the monsters for the movie, and it was incredible. And he gave me, somewhere during the time that I was doing Meet the Hollowheads, Dr. Zaius's left hand, like the hairpiece, right? And so that was sort of a cornerstone thing, and it survived the fire as well, because it made it to my office as well. So thank God, Maurice Evans' hairpiece from his left hand is still existing here in my office.
Great episode title.
Yes, exactly. So those, I have collected things from baseball cards to Dr. Zaius's left hand ever since I was a youngin', but definitely not, buying Rosebud or Ruby Slippers at this point. But
Not yet.
Yes.
Just wait till Tuesday or Wednesday. Yeah.
You did have this sort of period as like a child actor. I mean, I guess were you saving things from like movies you worked on and TV shows? Obviously, you did a long run on what was just the 10 of Us. I don't know. Did you keep scripts? Were you a pack rat too? Was that part of it? I mean, it's sort of collecting, but it's collecting yourself, so to speak.
Yeah, I did hold on to a lot of that stuff, which ended up, either, getting thrown away by parents or burned up in Palisadian fires. But I did. Yeah, I held on to it. There's something great about old scripts.
Sure.
And even as a director, when I got into television, I held on to tons of those as well, with all the notes in there. And, whether anyone would ever want to look at them again, I always enjoyed going back, and reminded me of memories and planning and prepping for something. It's a good trip down memory lane.
When I had the opportunity to work with actors or actresses that had been child stars, and I'm sure this is not 100% true, but the ones that were really good, it was incredible because they had been raised on a set. Like, I remember Christina Applegate hosting SNL, and because she had been doing Married with Children since she was whatever, like really, really young, she knew everybody's blocking. She knew in any sketch, she knew everybody else's blocking. She knew where her camera was at all times, which obviously, as you've watched SNL, people often don't know which cards they're supposed to be on. And she was such a consummate pro, and I don't think she ever tried to direct herself, but you could see it. It was really interesting, and you just felt like, oh, you were partially raised on a set.
Yeah.
So were you thinking about directing even as a child? Like, it was on your mind? So
yes,
you were observing, you were watching. Okay.
Yeah, it's true. As a child actor, you learn everybody else's lines, all the blocking, where the cameras are. It's sort of second nature. All of that stuff is true. I was never as talented as Christina Applegate. I was a working stiff, but I learned my lines. I did my job. I was a professional. But it was, I started when I was 3.5, 4 years old.
Was that like commercials and stuff first? Is that
commercials, a lot of commercials, and then eventually episodic television, and then being on a series for a while, a couple of bad movies no one remembers, that kind of thing. But it was an interesting time to grow up, and I was much more interested in what was happening on the other side. I was going every weekend to see all the movies that we all love, and I was dreaming of Back to the Future and Indiana Jones and all that stuff. And so I was much more interested in what the director, the writer, the producer was doing behind the camera. So I was gravitating that way even when I was 10, 11, 12. And then once I got into my 20s, it was all about that.
That was the road. Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the biggest, as a child actor, how big an asshole were you?
I was Not an asshole at all.
Okay.
I was very nice. I got along with everybody. I did everything I possibly could. And I think that's part of the sort of child actors, cross that they bear, is that you almost all my friends who went through it have this people-pleasing streak that you can't quite kick, because when you're 4 years old, like everything is about, did you hit your mark? Did you know your lines? Did you, and you want to make sure you live up to your end of the bargain.
That's just what an asshole would say, just for the record.
Yeah, assholes rarely admit to being assholes. But anyway,
yeah,
except Jeremy Piven. But anyway,
right.
Continue. And were comic books a part of your world? Because obviously the last couple of years of your life have been very comic book heavy.
Comic heavy.
So were you a reader? Were you a collector of those? Or where did comics fit in? I was curious.
Yeah, I'm not a big collector, but definitely a reader. And I knew the Fantastic Four, but I was a big Spider-Man fan. I was a big Superman fan. I really loved Christopher Reeve's Superman movie. This was, I think I was 3 when it came out. I sat on my mom's lap and I watched it in the movie theater and was riveted and forgot that I needed to go to the bathroom. So that when the movie was over, I had peed all over her lap. And she said, "Oh my God, what happened?" And I said, "Oh, I must have sat in some kryptonite at 3."
Yeah.
So this was definitely in my blood. I loved it.
Good
I
answer.
Dressed up. I thought so at 3, not too bad. Yeah. And I dressed up like superheroes all the time too. I would go to school dressed as Spider-Man, or I made these costumes myself. They were pretty janky, Superman, Batman, whatever. To the point where my preschool teacher called my parents and said, "I think it would be healthy if Matt came dressed as Matt to school." And I didn't own any normal clothes, so I had to borrow some from my brother and roll up the sleeves because he's older, and and I showed up in clothes that didn't fit, and she was like, "Oh, it's so great that Matthew is here. I love Matthew so much more than Spider-Man." And then you raise your hand to go to the bathroom, and she took me to the bathroom, and I pulled my pants down. I was wearing swimming trunks, and she said, "So why are you wearing swimming trunks?" And I said, "Because today I'm Aquaman." So I was committed to the bit completely. Yep. This was absolutely my childhood. So yeah, I did love comic books. I did love whether it was Bruce Banner, Incredible Hulk, on TV, or Spider-Man, the TV show, or the animated shows that were playing.
Yes.
However I could consume this stuff, I was.
Teachers these days are much more superhero positive, I think, than they were back in the 70s and 80s. My children just they could wear whatever they want to school, and they would be encouraged for it.
Good.
I think I told you this, Ryan, once, but our preschool had it was like a no superhero, no Star Wars, almost like a no pop culture T-shirt rule. Like you couldn't wear, you couldn't wear even like Super Mario Brothers or whatever it was. It was absolutely.
That seems like a specific attack against you and your family, Dave.
It was really verboten, and the two things that I remember, which always really made me laugh, was one, there was another dad that got thrown out for regularly wearing superhero shirts because that was his wardrobe. I collect it, but I don't wear it.
You don't
and he was constantly being thrown out of the building, basically, for
I like that.
not realizing he'd come to pick someone up and in basically a Star Wars shirt. And then the other thing was, I was constantly trying to find from those bootleg T-shirt shops. Maybe I've told you this story. I was always trying to find it would be Lao Che Airlines, so it would be from Temple of Doom, but you didn't know it was Temple of Doom unless you knew it was Temple of Doom, because it looked like an ad for an airline. And I was constantly trying to find that and Wayland Yutani T-shirts to dress my son in and send him in "Gotcha, you bitches! That's Aliens. He's wearing it. He's at your school." So yeah.
This is Aquaman.
Aquaman. Yes, exactly.
A really, really good use of energy.
I was so much younger then, by the way. I had a lot more energy.
Matt, it seems like you and I kind of made our way to superheroes the same way, which is sort of through the movies, right? So it's like you seeing Superman, and then it's like, well, I love that stuff, and then sort of seeing them in the spinner racks, right? And then finding it that way. I mean, that was me sort of with probably Superman, but to a lesser degree. But I think Batman '89 is I immediately just walked into a comic shop after that and was just ironically found my way into Spider-Man and the X-Men. Never read any Batman books. I don't really know how that happened, but that was sort of my way in. So it was visualized by the giant, larger than life figure on the silver screen, and then creating my love of comic books and comic book storytelling and all that.
Yeah, I still remember when Batman came out, and the lines around the building and how exciting that was. It just felt like the world changed. The world changed. Yeah. And Dick Tracy came out around the similar time, if I remember.
Yeah, I think it was the next summer, right? It was, and which is a comic book movie in its own right, and a comic strip movie, I guess. But even in that era, it felt that was definitely, if Batman hadn't existed, I don't think Dick Tracy would have been quite the same as it was, and the response might have not been quite the same as it was. But I saw that movie, I don't know, 3-4 times in the movie theater. I loved it.
It's so interesting that Dick Tracy, Warren Beatty's approach to it as a comic book movie in terms of the color scheme and the design and being ripped from the pages, which in a way, maybe was ahead of its time. Now this summer with Superman and, even Fantastic Four feeling much more like throwbacks to the comics. For a long time, it was about sort of grounding and moving these stories away from their comic book origins.
No, for so long, when you look back, and again, there's nothing wrong with them, but when you look back on some of these things, like even like those early X-Men movies, which I know, I guess Kevin was like an assistant on, right? He was one of the Lauren Schuler Donner's assistant maybe in those days. I can't remember where
that's right.
the timeline is, but I mean, again, obviously the source material is the comics, but at the same time, it's like, well, let's not have the spandex. Let's not have the yellow and the blue. Let's change it. Let's get away a little bit.
Embarrassed of it, I don't know.
Or at least thinking that people wouldn't accept it. I mean, again, we weren't there for the discussions. And then you jump to, there's a moment where you obviously, and maybe you had it a little bit on the Vision and Scarlet Witch thing, although obviously you were in sort of a suburban house, but there has to be something where you're walking in and all of a sudden you're in the Baxter Building and you're just sort of like, holy shit, I got them to build the Baxter Building, which must sort of hit you.
It does, yeah. I mean, certainly on WandaVision, we had a moment towards the end when we revealed her as the full Scarlet Witch for the first time in the MCU. Full big crown, all the stuff. And for years before, she'd been dressed in kind of red leather jackets and things that were kind of Scarlet Witch adjacent, and it was like, oh no, we can go big or go home. Like, how big should the crown be? As big as possible. And so, and then you see it obviously in Wolverine recently, in Deadpool and Wolverine, going back to a traditional costume and bringing these things to life. And yes, we were trying to figure out in doing Fantastic Four where Kirby meets Kubrick was kind of our design aesthetic, because we were doing a 60s retro future world, and it was about how much Kirby can you bring, how much Kubrick can you bring, where does that intersection lie, and so much of it is building the Baxter Building. And in the lobby of the Baxter Building, there is a model of the Baxter Building that is a cutout that shows every floor.
Like that cover, that famous cover. Yes. Oh, wow.
So it's just filled with Easter eggs for Fantastic Four, not for any other Marvel project except, but just how many of those sort of classic comic things can we put in there?
When it came to things, I remember in... forgive me, which Thor movie? Which is the Thor movie with Hela and they're in space? Ragnarok. Thank you. Sorry. Titles leave me. There were distinctly pieces of Kirby architecture and like Kirby signage. Some of like the lines that are just very Kirby. And I was just curious, like, are there moments where you kind of in your mind are like, this is Kirby, or you handed something to whether it's a prop guy or an art guy, and it's like, I know we're doing certain things are different, whatever, but we have to build this exactly like this, so to speak?
Yeah. I mean, we brought a lot of Kirby design elements into it, from the Galactus's ship, which is called the World Ship, is very much kind of where Nostromo meets the Kirby designs.
Wow.
In terms of how do you borrow both of those languages and put them together. Throughout the whole, I mean, from the Fantasticar to the way the Thing looks to the costumes, the what we call the tech suits or the superhero suits, so much of it is drawn as much as we could from the pages of Kirby. And then looked at through kind of a Sid Mead lens a little bit, right? So we wanted to place it in the 60s, but then put it in this retro future 60s on a different Earth, different universe. So that's where the Kubrick thing comes in too. It's like, what were the people in the 60s dreaming about the future?
Right.
It's same with Star Trek, which we all love, and that same idea. They're both created in that same era of space race, JFK optimism, looking to the stars, imagining that right heart, right mind, right technology can solve anything. Reed and Sue are, Kirk and Spock in many ways, right? All heart and head coming together. And so we were trying to figure out, like,
By the way, and again, I haven't seen the film yet, obviously. So, although maybe by the time this airs, I will have. Anyways, that's very confusing. But I was going to say they're kind of Kirk and Spock, but Reed and Sue are also JFK and Jackie too, which at least I've picked up on that vibe just from trailers and whatnot in a really wonderful way. That again, that sort of '60s thing, yeah.
Absolutely. In our film, she's running the Future Foundation, which is basically United Nations. And so she's the Secretary General of the world, kind of using her emotional intelligence and charm to kind of pull the world together, and her tenacity and intelligence to kind of make a better world, while Reed is in the lab solving everything 5 minutes away from destroying the world or saving it. And that's their kind of perfect combination, in the same way that without Spock, Kirk would, he would go into danger with no plan, and, everything would get screwed up. They need each other. They complement each other in that way. But yes, they live these very public lives. So we were looking at, and one of the things I love about Kirby is he was looking at science as well. He was a futurist. I love, when Reed's going into the negative zone for the first time, it's those collages
where he was like Xeroxing and sort of making things sort of negative looking kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's pulling it out of the pages of popular science. He's dreaming of the future in the same way that Roddenberry is, and they're informed by that. And so we wanted to kind of say, okay, well, let's have the World's Fair in New York in the mid 60s all over the city. Monorails and saucer-shaped buildings, and yet it still be New York for all of us who've lived in New York. And New York is a great city because it's built in layers, and you can always see the layers of history. And then now we have the kind of Reed Richards technology and architecture rising up and out of familiar New York City. So hopefully it feels grounded in a way.
In your alternate timeline, Reed Richards replaces Robert Moses for the better. Yes.
I absolutely describe him as Steve Jobs meets Einstein meets Robert Moses. He is exactly that. Yeah.
The super power broker, if you would, Dave.
Yeah, I like that.
Exactly. I was very, very lucky and privileged. Matt very kindly invited me out to see the sets back when they were still shooting. I think you were toward the end of the schedule.
Were you guys on the same lot, or was that a different lot?
No, they were at Pinewood. But I happily took the trip. It was amazing to go out there. And my experience, because at that point nobody had seen anything. My experience walking around was very much exactly what we were talking about. It felt like a Kubrickian sort of, a Jack Kirby Kubrickian sort of, if you were in the 60s. Basically, if you were in the 50s doing what's 15 years from now going to look like, and with the most sort of optimistic, just the way like the Apollo program didn't exist in 1960, and then 1969 we had a man on the moon, like that kind of development. That's sort of what it felt like to me. And and I've seen every Marvel movie in a great way. It definitely felt like home in the sense of it was a Marvel movie, but it felt like something entirely new. It felt like a not a reboot, but it just felt like an alt universe, an offshoot. So all the things that you wanted it to do. And I walked around my sets a lot, and I know they're very impressive because people have told me that, and I believe it too. But you live at them and you're home at them. You sort of you get used to seeing it every day. I was just floored by what I saw, and the number of things and the amount of things that were fully built, and not just little pieces that were going to be extended with blue screen. I mean, just the amount of tactile stuff, particularly New York, which was still, I think you guys had finished shooting it, but it was still up, and you guys kindly walked me around the back lot. But it was just, and I grew up outside of New York. I lived in New York for a while. Somehow, even though it wasn't New York, it felt like this sort of science fiction kind of traveling back in time, but into the future version of New York, and you could almost like smell it in the way it was built. And I think that the production design was just brilliant. Across the board, the art department, kudos to them. I think they were building the Galactus ship when I was there. When I just walked in, I was like, what is this massive monstrosity? What are you doing on the stage? But it was really, really impactful. And I think that, that's carried through. And again, I have also not seen the movie yet, but in everything that I've seen in the trailers.
Or maybe you have. Maybe you've seen it 3 times at this point.
At the time of this recording, I have not seen the movie. But I think success to you guys and the team. I really think you kind of pulled it together. I mean, how much of that, because obviously Marvel is is an ecosystem unto its own. I mean, how much of that are you kind of, bringing in from the outside? How much of that is dovetailing into, say, ideas that, they already had and a vision they already kind of had for the thing? What is that process like versus, when you're doing a project kind of your own? Can you just talk to us about that? Setting an aesthetic, doing, building the physical things that people will eventually want to collect.
Exactly. I mean, I was shocked when I first came in and worked on WandaVision at how intimate an experience it is at this big company that makes these giant movies. It's made by very few people, Kevin and Lou, who kind of run the company. That's it. And then there are the people there's a wonderful person who runs VFX, a wonderful person who runs production, and someone who runs post-production. And that's it, And then, of course, you're hundreds and thousands of amazing people who work on the project. But it's a very intimate experience, and you spend a year plus in development. And, when I started, there was a sort of kernel of an outline idea, but we kind of developed it, iterated on it, changed it, and then just kind of built this world as we went. I think one of the things that did pre-exist before I got there was this notion of putting them on a different Earth and a different universe, which makes a lot of sense because with the Eternals, when it came out, everyone asked that question: where were they? Why didn't they help when Thanos came? And it made sense to just put our Fantastic Four, because they're such public personalities. They are the leading lights of their age. People would have talked about them, heard about them, and if they were around and alive, they would have contributed to fighting off whatever threats were coming. So putting them on their own universe made sense. And it also made sense, I think, because they're the only heroes in our world. And so you don't need to have seen a bunch of other things, or you don't need to be up to date on Marvel to appreciate it. And it's a family movie, so people can come and it can be their first Marvel experience, which really is a new thing since Iron Man, because there's this interconnectedness has been wonderful. Right. But at a certain point, I know my wife was like, "Oh, I need to do homework. I don't know who all these people are."
I sort of have to remind my wife, you sit down and it's like, okay, so remember, this is so and so from this movie, and then they met, and now this movie. Yes.
Yeah. And it becomes like Shakespeare, it's like this whole thing of it's really complicated, all these relationships. And I think this movie is a wonderful opportunity for a bunch of new folks to come to Marvel. But at the same time, it's Marvel's first family. So if you're a Marvel fan, this is a great homecoming for these amazing Mount Rushmore characters that saved the company and built the Silver Age, on their backs. And then they will move on and be interconnected in Avengers movies, so that would all, connect again. But it's a moment to kind of appreciate coming into this new world with these new characters. And so that was an idea beforehand. And then the 60s just made sense to us, and, to me especially, because that's where they belong. And much like meeting Cap in World War II when they brought in Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, it's where they belong. It's their DNA. It's their ethos. You don't have to apologize for their optimism. And they're informed by the space race and this.
No, there is something funny with the Fantastic Four where when they've in the comic books, this is the comic books, not the movie, when they've tried to sort of let's retell their origin in 2025, and that there's a sense of like a guy sneaking his girlfriend and her brother onto an experimental rocket in 2025. You're like, what? But in 1960, yeah, sure, bring your brother, bring your girlfriend. It's okay. It's like somehow it all works better in the 60s. Yeah,
it does. And there's a great documentary that was made about the Apollo 11 mission on the anniversary a few years ago that was in IMAX. I don't know if you guys saw it. That is really one of the most extraordinary docs ever made. And I was just blown away by it. It was something I had seen a few years ago on that anniversary. But then in starting this process, I wanted to watch it again. I was like, you know what? What if Reed and Sue are Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin?
Right. They're two of the original six or whatever it is. Yeah.
And it's like, and so the four of them become the Apollo 11 astronauts. Their mission, of course, ends, in a different way than the mission, obviously, to the moon in terms of cosmic radiation and all of that. But it just helped to ground them in this Apollo 11 space race JFK world. And that brought them to life for me in a really great way. And so we did lean heavily into that kind of Apollo 11 vibe.
In your various production offices and stuff, were you often just sometimes tearing stuff like right out of comics and stuff. I know like I think in stores right now, if I understand this correctly, there's a collection that you kind of wrote the intro to that has a lot of the Jonathan Hickman run, which is the Future Foundation and stuff. And then I also picked up, there's a standalone comic book that Matt Shakman wrote that is like as if this is the comic that comes out in their universe. They star in comics, and I did love that sort of conceit that this is a comic from the universe. And my buddy Phil Noto did one of the covers. Phil Noto did our logo for our show. That's Phil Noto did the logo, and he did that cover. Anyway, I thought the idea of this is the comic that the Foundation would publish in the world of whatever the universe number is. I don't know, whatever you guys are calling it. But yeah, I thought all of that was really fun. But I was just going back to the comics and stuff. And we have a lot of art collectors that kind of, there's a crossover because of my comic art collection. Have you dipped into comic art buying as well? Has that hit you yet as well?
Yes. I went last year to Comic-Con to make a presentation about Fantastic Four as part of the Marvel panel. But on the day,
I got to see that in Hall H. Yeah, it was really pretty incredible. Yeah, with the car flying around and stuff. Yeah, it was pretty wonderful.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. But we were there for less than 24 hours, coming from England, in the middle of shooting. And but I went with my friend Glenn David Gold, who's a great novelist, but also a collector of comic art, and he was my sort of Virgil guiding me through. And I found a page that from Kirby, which has the fighting the surfer's surfboard, and Reed is all kind of stretched up in it and has some beautiful Johnny flame on.
Is that like like 55 or 54, one of those, or is it a later one?
It is slightly later, I think.
Okay.
I think it might be 70 something. I have to go back. My brain is not up to speed with all these. It's memory of a goldfish these days. But it's beautiful. It's great. Got it framed, hung on my wall, and then I did buy a couple of panels from that in-universe issue, which Matt Shakman wrote, which is wonderful. And he and I did a Godzilla show together for Apple, and was another trusted advisor because he's written some great Fantastic Four runs, and so he was someone I spoke to often about this world, and so it was wonderful that Marvel was able to bring him in so he could do that.
It all comes back to original comic art, and always does. Talk to us, Matt, about the stuff that was built for the film, the things that aren't unfortunately now sitting struck and destroyed after being built so beautifully. The sets and things that don't survive. Talk to us about how do you make, because obviously there have been other Fantastic Four iterations in the past. Talk to us about conceiving.
I did have one question. The Roger Corman one had a budget of, I believe, $77. Was your budget higher or lower than that? That was my
just a little bit higher, and just to mention that, because that's I think a really sad story about that Roger Corman movie that never got released, and how hard everyone worked. It was something that kind of haunted me a little bit as we were putting it together, and so I reached out to the 4 lead actors in the Corman film and had them come and join our movie.
Oh my gosh, that's your. That is because you are an ex-actor. You are a good person. No writer director that had never been an actor would have ever thought to do anything like that. Yeah, it wouldn't have occurred to me in a million years.
But they're wonderful.
A good man. You're a good man.
They're in it. Johnny does a little salute to some construction workers after he saves their factory before he makes the 4 in the sky, and the guy who salutes back to him is the original Human Torch from that, and he's standing next to the original Ben Grimm, and anyway, so that Corman movie, was I know a labor of love and very close to the comics and to the spirit of Kirby. And I'm sorry,
those props are not the worst. I mean, they're kind of interesting props. I mean, they did put some money into the Thing mask and the what they're like those have floated around. I mean, it's that weird thing because I think a lot of the people, I guess I'm older than both of you guys. In my age, that was one of the first things that I remember buying a VHS bootleg at a Comic-Con. That's how we all saw that movie. Was basically this shitty bootleg because that's how you saw it. And you have a little soft spot for it. But yeah,
definitely.
But the props aren't bad. The Thing head I see around from time to time. I feel
really?
Like, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. It's for sale.
Yes.
Yeah. No, they did it. They did a great job. And but yeah. So we built so much. When you're building a 60s retro future world, especially one that is about Reed Richards, who's making his own
I was going to
tech.
say, even if it wasn't 60s, he invents things. And so everything, like, it's like he never drives a regular car because he invents. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we had to invent everything that was bespoke to them, whether it was a Fantastic Car or Herbie Robot. And then we had consumer versions of Herbie robots and retro future cars that were very charming.
Oh,
and
so there's like, he has Herbie, but then other people have like a Herbie Alexa kind of a thing in their house?
Like a prosumer Herbies that look a little different, and they're zooming around doing deliveries or whatever. I thought of it as like the iPhone, again, my sort of Steve Jobs, Robert Moses, Albert Einstein comparison, that probably before he became Mr. Fantastic, because he was a child prodigy, he was introducing new technology 20, 30 years before, which is why by the time we get to the 60s, it's completely different from our 60s. And so our Fantastic Car, was a sort of nod to, again, retrofuturism, but also Detroit. How could we make this feel like a concept car of the era, much like, Batmobile being based on that kind of, on a Futura or whatever. And then, but also introducing, a lot of the lines and design that we have going on in the Baxter Building and the rest of the city into it. But it was built for real, fully worked, every part of it. It couldn't fly, but it could fly, if you know what I mean. On a, we did a lot of the driving with it. We put a Tesla engine in it, and it went really fast down the street. So all of the stuff that you see in the movie.
Put a Tesla engine in it, just blew up. No, it's great.
It went very, very fast.
It started Zeke Heiling. It just was really weird. It was a very anti-Semitic car. But
I almost beat Dave to the Nazi joke.
You can't beat me. It's my fastest move. It's my fastest move. Yeah.
And then like the costumes, which I imagine were a particular thing because we know what the Fantastic Four look like in 2 dimensions. And often, I imagine, having not done a superhero movie, the problem with that is often, how do you realize that in 3 dimensions and make it look credible, like if it's in the world? And I think that's where we end up with a lot of like the leather X-Men and the other things that have experimented with. So, how do you, because I think you guys did kind of came back around from the sort of, from going from the Corman era into the kind of the dark sort of Marvel leather Fox period, look, coming back around into the comic book look, but making it look like future suits in a super scientist suits, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, that was definitely the goal. And, working closely with Alex Byrne, our costume designer, and Ryan Minerding, who runs visual development for Marvel, who is amazing. We were looking at Kirby, we were looking at the comic books for inspiration, but wanting to make something that felt very practical, that there was a logic behind it, and that it was made of real materials. So they're made of a stretchy kind of cottony fabric, and we figured out ways to be able to print designs into them and to create interesting ridges and things that would work. But we called them tech suits for a reason. We didn't call them superhero suits, because one of the things I've loved about the Fantastic Four is that they are, explorers, parents, friends, family, all of these things before they're superheroes. They're kind of superheroes only when they have to be, and only when their world or their city or their family is threatened. They're scientists. They're Imaginauts, right? That's what they are. Right. And so we wanted these suits to feel incredibly practical, and that nothing was being done purely for aesthetic reasons, as many of these really beautiful superhero suits are done, but they have all these kind of designs and things in them that don't feel that they're for a purpose. So that's why form following function, as it were, with those costumes.
Did you ever get to put a suit on? Did you ever get to wear one?
No, I never put one on. No, unfortunately not. But the tech suits that we built for them are so beautiful. The spacesuits are gorgeous. We have sort of 2 iterations of spacesuits, a kind of an Apollo 11 era spacesuit, which is beautiful, and then much more of the retro future kind of 2001 spacesuits that they wear for the sort of present day
the present film. Missions. Yeah. So you have the one that they get kind of gamma irradiated in, right? Which is the Apollo series, and then there's sort of a few the kind of now suit, right?
Yeah, and they're gorgeous. And the backpacks, the sort of the oxygen pack for the now suit, the retro future suit, looks kind of like a really fun period Dyson vacuum that's been kind of turned into a oxygen tank. I have actually got to keep Sue Storm's spacesuit from the film, including that pack and helmet, which
sorry, this is the original one or the later one?
The later one. The later one.
Gotcha.
And it's for a pregnant woman, right? Which, so I really wanted to keep it because it was such an unusual spacesuit that I don't think there's ever been another one made for, a pregnant superhero.
But also so
going
much
to
about
space.
that character as both a hero, a leader, but also a mother. I mean, that's part of what's so fascinating about her.
And it contains sort of the double meaning of the title too, First Steps, in terms of baby as well as, Neil Armstrong and that sort of thing. So, so it felt like the one thing to keep, and it's great.
Awesome. Now, what is that process? Is it like you have to go to Kevin Feige and be just like, Kevin, pretty, please, can I have the pregnancy suit? Or how does that work?
He listens to the podcast. He knows. Kevin knows. He knows how this works. You got to keep it. What did you keep?
I mean, that is essentially that, which is to say, hey, would you mind? And they were great about it. I think he said, if we need it for additional photography, just
we'll
bring
know
it
where
back.
It is. Yeah, we'll know where it is.
Exactly. But no, they were great. And they let me keep something from WandaVision too. I got to keep a toaster. So we had all of these period advertisements, commercials in the first episode, which was done in front of a live studio audience, sort of a Dick Van Dyke homage. We had a toaster commercial, which was my sort of favorite of those commercials. And it's a Stark brand toaster that when you turn it on, it starts to beep like the bomb that sort of blew up, Wanda's life when she was young. And so I got to keep that. Similarly, hey, do you mind if I keep this toaster? And they said, sure. So it's great to be able to keep some stuff.
That's excellent.
Is the desire,
Matt.
Just to fill your like car trunk with just everything? Like, I mean, is it just, do you think about that a little bit? Oh, you can admit it here.
Yeah. Of course. I mean, I don't know if you guys have had the pleasure of going to Jim Cameron's setup here, in LA, his Lightstorm Entertainment. He has this entire soundstage full of the original miniature for Titanic, the Queen Alien, Terminator, Avatar stuff, incredible. And it's just a dream to walk through there and see all the things that, we've loved so much.
Sadly, Matt, another archive that I have not yet been invited to. So I'm just, I'm waiting for that and for the Lucasfilm archives.
That. I saw the offices, I guess, down there years ago when we were looking at space. So I think I saw the offices and there was stuff like in the lobby of it, but I didn't see the full whatever, if that makes you feel better, Ryan.
They such an incredibly lovely the great John Landau, who's passed away, who was his producing partner, was our host down there when we were in prep, and brought us down and showed us their entire pipeline, had mocap actors there. We were able to film a scene and kind of see the entire process of putting together that, because it was something that I had done a little bit of, but not a lot. And I knew I'd be doing it with The Thing and with Surfer, and really wanted to kind of immerse myself in where they, in their pipeline, and to sort of see. And they were incredibly welcoming, and talked to Cameron for a while on Zoom as well, who was very generous. And it's amazing to get a chance to talk to your heroes and to realize that they are so generous with their time and so lovely. And I learned an incredible amount, including how much of a Fantastic Four fan he is, which was great. But just to kind of think about how would he approach, these power sets and this world building and all the specific little things that we had. But it was very kind of him. Yeah.
Very important, Matt. Did you ask him if he kept his hero pulse rifle from Aliens? It's been missing, and it's very important.
We're pretty sure he has it.
Terminator, legendary career, yes aside, we need to know, does James Cameron have the original hero light up pulse rifle?
I don't know.
Can you get him on the phone right now and ask him?
I will certainly
Can you
try.
pretend you have a question about mocap, and then while you're, let me find where I wrote down that question. But by the way, while you're holding,
I wrote it on my pulse rifle. But speaking of which, do you? I need to know.
When you guys are working, because obviously there is this mocap component, does anybody still, or do you guys ever do like I guess for lack of a better word, are there like three-dimensional actual models, or is it all digital? Yes. Like, so there are maquettes, like almost like animation maquettes.
We did.
Set you up. Great tee up. I didn't even tell him this, Matt. What a great tee up for physical model builds. You should tell the story.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, we tried to be as practical as possible on the movie in every way. So from building miniatures, we have a 14-foot tall Excelsior, which is absolutely gorgeous, to a real Fantasticar, like we talked about, real Herbie robots that were fully animatronic. And we also had a thing. We had a practical thing that was built by Barry Gower, who's worked, I believe, with Ryan. And it was on the original Game of Thrones with me, amazing prosthetic or makeup effects artist. And he built a thing mask, both bearded and not bearded, articulated hands, and then Alex Byrne and her team built costumes that for every single look in the movie, so that when we were filming with him, some wide shots, we were able to actually use this, proxy of Ben. Most of the shots in the movie, though, are Eben and are CG, but you could bring in this proxy with a wonderful actor in it, Richard Summers Calvert, and he could walk the blocking, do all the behavior, do everything in our lighting environment. And then we knew exactly what he should look like.
Right.
And we also had a rock that we found out in Joshua Tree that we were like, this is what Ben's skin should look like. I heard about
this was the color, right? Like, this is going to be what it is. Yeah.
We called it Jenny from the Rock, and we brought her in and we filmed her in every lighting environment. And it's just so nice. Same with the miniature, because you guys know when you get into VFX, it's like, what should it look like in real life is what everyone is chasing.
Yeah,
and you
so
just
hard.
iterate a million times, and everyone's making up what they think it would look like, But when you have something, you're like, oh no, that's what he looks like. I know exactly what he looks like in that lighting environment, and there's the rock. It made it wonderful for all of our VFX artists, and it gave us something to chase, And the same with the miniature.
Who has Jenny?
Good question. There were two Jennys. There was a main unit and a second unit Jenny, and I haven't seen her in a while. I wonder if someone in the VFX department maybe ran away with her. I'm not. We had also had a beautiful silver surfer head on a stick that I believe is
that
with
was
our VFX.
reflective. That was sort of reflective, so you could kind of see it in
kind
situ.
of like those mirror balls that the VFX artists use, but actually her face. And so occasionally Julia would have to carry it around, which was very strange.
Like our dragon heads that we are which you saw in my kitchen, Cyrax, the lighting reference model.
Which I remember from original Game of Thrones, how hilarious it was when you'd be out there shooting some epic dragon scene, and then the VFX guys would come in with the mirrored ball, the little, proxy dragon head, and it sort of, it definitely ruins the mood a little bit.
It does ruin the mood. Yeah, some of my favorite moments on the Buck unit, which is, as you know, is can be rather tedious just because of how repetitive and long and sort of motion control it is. But at the end of it, they would always send the double up, who's usually a stunt performer, just would test out the rig, make sure it was safe to bring the actor in, the movements were safe, they weren't going to, rattle anybody's brains and things like that. So the double would go back up to do this sort of lighting reference, and they would have to carry the dragon head on the stick in costume, usually in a sort of not great wig that was just on for lighting reference, and then the Buck would move around with them, just holding them, just looking, just with the kind of the Ben Affleck sort of 1,000-yard hello darkness my old friend stare, and you just imagine them playing back
show
there
business.
like I played high school football.
Like
I was a varsity.
I
was like the second string quarterback. If my knee hadn't gotten, I would have been the guy. I could have been the next Peyton Manning. And they're up there with their, with the dragon head, and it still delights me to this day. I sent it at some point. I filmed one in really good high iPhone quality in the lighting, and I just sent it to HBO, and I said this should be the first season 3 trailer. Just the guy on the thing doing it, just like staring ahead. Very much enjoy that. But these are nice things that are all kind of production ephemera that I would say would be, people like us would care about. And that's why, I grabbed the dragon, because I was like, our dragons are, fully digital. It's something that everybody wants when they think of House of the Dragon. You think of dragon eggs, which are very cool, and those are practical. But in terms of the dragons themselves, this is the closest that you get to it. Yeah. And even though you never see it on screen, it's so part of the use. It's so part of the making of the movie. And I would, I think that Silver Surfer head that's a killer piece, because it was there every day, and it's in all the behind the scenes footage. And I think that's one of the, what would you keep from Fantastic Four? That would be high on my list.
Yeah, definitely. No, for sure. And I think it went home with Scott, our VFX supervisor, and he deserves it. He's brilliant. He, I think, is the only person to have ever won an Oscar for a Marvel film, for Spider-Man 2. alongside the great John Dykstra. And so he is, wonderful, kind-hearted man who did a brilliant job and never lost his cool over 2 years of an insane schedule, and really brought so many things to life beautifully. So I think he might have that. I hope he does.
There's something just incredible about the fact that after all these years, and again, not looking to cast shade on the past, but all these versions of Galactus as a cloud and and whatever that, I've only seen the trailer and the popcorn bucket, but we are finally getting a giant world eater in a purple costume with a wonderful Kirby helmet, et cetera, et cetera.
I saw the drone activation at Comic-Con. That thing was crazy.
Yeah, that was. He sent me a video of it. I didn't see it live, but the scale,
he sent it to me
size,
too.
Yeah,
thank God, because I hadn't arrived yet, and I was blown away. That's I have that video too. We are bringing him to life, and he is an amazing actor.
Yes,
Ralph Ineson, and he is in this amazing costume that they built. There's layer of CG over the top, as well. So
I'm assuming it's a little bit like Hella's, where he wears something and then the CG makes it more bigger and complicated a little bit too, or.
It ended up being kind of across the board, even because we did things to his skin as well. It's a fine line to try to make him feel of a piece and not like a guy in a suit, right? Like that sort of Batman.
Forgive me, it's who's the comic artist that did a wonderful job with that? Ladrone, do you know that? Did you look at any of that stuff?
No.
He's a very Mobius looking guy.
Yeah.
And so he would kind of almost give like Galactus's face like a texture that made him not just a man in a big purple suit. He was other. I don't know what else to call it. Yeah.
Which is similar. We have like a lot of grooves and lines and things in there. And so it ended up being that Ralph wore this suit and filmed everything in this suit, both on in sets like Ryan was describing, big giant sort of sets for him, and then we also filmed mocap stuff for him. And so it's a combination of different technologies. But the tricky thing is getting scale right for him, because he's enormous. And early on, the producer from Marvel, Grant Curtis, who had worked on those Spider-Man Raimi movies, took me out to lunch with Dykstra because we wanted to, go talk to the great man. And, and he is amazing and he's wonderful. I was talking about how I wanted to build all these miniatures, and he was like, why the fuck would you want to do that? He's like a futurist to the end, and he's like, just do
digital.
Do what's new. And I'm like, you're amazing. But we were talking about scale because, obviously we all still remember seeing, the Imperial Destroyer going over the top of the lens and all of the detail. Nothing has ever felt more real to me and still feels more real than that miniature coming over at the top of lens. And part of it is that you can see little tiny doors and little tiny windows and all this kind of stuff. And so you understand scale. The problem is Galactus has a ship that's as big as he is with doors as big as he is. And so how do you tell scale if you don't have a little tiny Fantastic Four person or a surfer to kind of help you out? And so a big part of that was designing shots and everything around him.
By the way, allow me to throw in as a longtime comic fan, the comics are inconsistent. Sometimes he's as tall as the Baxter Building. Sometimes he's much taller. You know what I mean? And he's fallen in the ground and he seems like X length, and other times he seems Y length. So it's not like there's a definitive, he's got to be, 11 feet 3. There's not an official measurement. Yeah.
No, and in fact, not to like blow it, but or give anything away, but his scale changes in our movie too, but not to the eye. It's like I've done Godzilla before too, and it's the same thing. You want to make sure that he's big relative to whatever he's next to, and so sometimes he needs to be taller than the building. Sometimes he needs to be as tall as the Golden Gate Bridge. He changes by hundreds of feet, and we did the same thing with Galactus. He ranges from 700 to 1,000 feet to 1,200 feet, depending on what he's near. But it was, I love Galactus. He's a great character. Obviously one of the classic Fantastic Four villains. And to not have him as a cloud, but to have him, in all of his powerful glory as a planet eater is great. And, he's very much, kind of like the dark Reed Richards in a way, right? He's this scientist, Galen of Ta, who survived the destruction of his universe and was reborn as this eternal cosmic vampire who goes around munching on planets. He's sort of the end result of like chasing scientific technology and exploration to an unhealthy point.
An insane extreme, yeah.
Right. And you, yeah, like you mentioned Hickman as well earlier, as a reference point. He's the similar thing of like this sort of cautionary tale with the Council of Reeds of like what can happen if you chase, the pursuit of knowledge to a point where you abandon your family and you lose sight of all of that. These are important themes. Yeah.
Very, very cool.
That's all great. I have a question. I just wanted to talk about hand props, and because that would be the other sort of side of this, and then sort of
because normally I feel like, Ryan, you and I are not often costume guys, but in this case, I think the costumes are pretty incredible. And I don't
yet to see the movie,
right?
because I don't know yet. Usually I go hand prop.
I've seen the previews,
but
so
yes. But not everything is in there. With this movie, I would be surprised if I was talked out of wanting a costume, but I just wanted to know, like, what were the hand props? What were the key hand props in the movie? And then like what sort of the thinking that went into those, and then, which one you would have put in your pocket and taken home.
I think the obvious one is the DigiCalc, which is their sort of communication device, which is worn like a watch and was a beautiful piece of engineering. And
Speaking
each of them
of
had them.
Dick Tracy, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much
Dick Tracy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very much very much a Dick Tracy prop homage, and it is featured nicely in the movie, and they wear them casually when they're out and about, and they wear them on top of their spacesuits. So we made new ones for the spacesuits that could be big enough to go around the cuff. And then, of course, they wear them on their tech suits as well. So I think those are probably the best. There is a recreation DigiCalc that one of the companies has put out this month, which I think you can buy, one of the watch companies. I can't recall,
fun.
Which
that's
is
awesome.
Really neat. So I would say that's probably the primary one. It's not a bit, not a lot of guns, not a lot of weaponry in the Fantastic Four. They're a peace-loving group, and they don't carry a lot of weapons. No. Spoiler: no ultimate nullifier in this one.
Oh, that was my that was my one question. Was did you build an ultimate nullifier?
Save something for the sequel. Yeah.
My question was going to be, and again, I people will know, like, even if not a plot device, is there one like sitting in a shot? Like you made one, it just isn't like used, but I guess not. Yeah.
Nope, we didn't. Okay. But definitely the bridge, which is a Hickman invention too, which is a kind of weight that Reed travels around.
Travel through the dimensions and whatnot. Yeah.
That's key to our movie, and it's something that Reed is kind of working on in prototype form. So there's a prototype version of that, which I guess is not really a hand prop, but is a small prop that then ends up becoming more important, obviously, as the movie goes on. So I would say that's probably one. I mean, charming hand props that I think are great are all the in-universe things that they built. Like you were talking about the comic book, but within our sets we had tons of magazines with like Teen Beat magazines with John,
with like Johnny on it and stuff.
Johnny on the cover, and then you flip through it, and every page has something real, like interviews with them.
I love that.
Photo inserts that came out, golf magazines, science magazines, all that stuff.
All right,
was
Mikey,
brilliant.
if you're listening, I would like one of those. I feel like you can spare a magazine from the set. Come on, man.
Those would be great.
Just two, right? Me and Ryan. Come on, man. Okay.
Some of the cooking props, because we made bespoke cooking things for Ben, right? Because his hands are so much larger and he has one less finger, and so there are definitely knives that were made of different sizes, scale ones too, so that they were smaller, so Eben could feel like what it was like to kind of try to chop garlic with something that was smaller than his hand. Those would be really fun. And of course, Herbie, he's not really a hand prop, but he was,
Herbie's awesome. Yeah.
Herbie is really beautiful and fun, charming, and he's a combination of a classic sort of Star Wars fully animatronic droid, as well as something that's puppeteered. Right. So we had amazing puppeteer Jack who moved him around and kind of brought a lot of the personality and character to him, because it's always hard when you have a team of 6 to 8 people running a droid, running Herbie. It's very hard to create one singular performance out of it. So Jack would kind of
dare I say, not just a performance, but a personality. I mean, that's really the key. Yeah.
Yeah. And to be able to play with the actors, and especially when you're in these enormous sets, like Reed's lab is humongous. I wanted someone who could move about and make choices as a performer, play off of the other actors and set a performance. And then when it was time to go in for close-ups, we had already established what would happen, and we already had a sense of of, whether Herbie was annoyed or excited or, put
Did
upon.
Did you know what Herbie's voice was going to be like early on? Did you sort of decide like how, I don't know, how digital, how robot-y or whatnot? Like where was that part of the process of learning, or where did that come in?
It was definitely part of the process. It was driven by the design, because he has these kind of large computer ribbon tape eyes, kind of old IBM.
Right.
So I knew that a big part of it would be they were going to be expressive eyes, but they would sound like, the old, spinny computer disk things as it was searching for its information. But it would also then need some sort of humanity on top of that, something that you could connect to. So Matthew Wood, who's from Skywalker, who is our overall sound guru, has contributed to. He was part of creating Wall-E's voice, and he's the
voice of Grievous, right? He's the voice of Grievous. Yeah, I think I knew that. Yeah.
He's a wonderful human and a brilliant, talented guy, and he is literally the voice of Herbie. So he figured out a way to kind of record dialogue in English and then mess with it. So like there are definitely some times where you can kind of get a sense, maybe vaguely, of what Herbie might be saying, but it's all just skewed enough. And then on top of it goes, the spinny discs and the little chirps and things to kind of bring him some personality. So
I love that you sort of, I don't know, I guess it's not a reclamation project, but a little bit, just in that Herbie, when he first was created, was for the cartoon because they didn't want a Human Torch. They didn't want basically kids lighting themselves on fire. So for a lot of people, that early cartoon of sort of the Fantastic Three and this robot that we all kind of hate, and then eventually he popped into the comics and kind of whatever. But I kind of love that you sort of found a world for him in a really good way.
Really been a great secret weapon for us. He brings so much life and humor to it, and so he's been a great addition. But yes, he's pulled from that animated show. And also, not to spoil anything, but we did work with a wonderful animation company, and we created our own 60s style animated show with our
like that
characters.
People would have watched that in-world thing.
Yes,
That's great.
Yes, exactly. So if you stay tuned and watch all the way through the credits, there will be something waiting for you at the very end. So
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, which is great.
Well, I think that brings us to a nice to our credits here. Matt, this was really incredible.
Yeah,
I can't wait to see
fantastic.
the movie.
Yeah.
I'll be there on opening weekend. I would have been anyway, but just because I'm very excited about it. This is the Marvel thing that I've probably been most excited about, I think, since probably like the sort of Endgame Avengers world. Like I really feel like this is, it feels like the beginning of something, so like a new exciting chapter in a really big way. And I think, as Superman just did this weekend, I think it's, people have kind of, the superhero fatigue, whatever nonsense that was. I think if you deliver a movie that people want to see with the characters that people want to see, I think they'll come out in droves. And I'm really excited for you in this this project. I'm excited to see it myself.
Thank you. Well, fingers crossed. We'll see how it goes. But I'm excited for everyone to see it. It's been 3 years of labor of love, and I'm really excited to bring it out.
Great. Where can people find you, or do you just not want the nerds that listen to this podcast finding you?
Where do you want to be found so that they can go, what do you mean no ultimate nullifier?
I'm not on social media.
Good for you. Yeah.
Good choice.
Yeah, I don't choose to bring that into my life, but I know that many people do, and it's a great thing. But yeah, for me, not really very findable in the world. Yeah.
How are people going to express their anger that you've allowed Sue Richards to read, that she can actually read and has a brain? Like I don't understand. Like, what do you mean she's in charge? I like my women in the so
yeah. Why is there a story about the woman? Why
is there a woman in this movie? Yeah.
It's the Fantastic Four, not the Fantastic Woman. Whatever.
Exactly.
And also the 5 Gen X fans that are mad that you put the Human Torch in it, as well as, because everybody knows it's the Fantastic 3 and Herbie.
Right.
Why is the Human Torch in it?
Yep. They'll have to write letters and mail them in, and that's how they'll find me. Yeah, exactly.
Good. Matt, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, this was
congratulations.
A blast and a half. Huge congrats, and very, very excited. Yeah.
Thank you guys very much for having me.
And we'll be sharing photos of the pregnant Sue Storm super spacesuit on social media, so Matt will send those through so
and
you guys can see
my drawing of the ultimate nullifier of what it should look like. Like it's pretty technical drawing on a napkin, but I think you're gonna like it, so you'll see that too. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I'll have it for the sequel.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, everyone. You can find us at Props Podcast on social media, where you can complain all you like about anything. We don't give a shit, and we will pay no attention to it.
Yes.
And then also write us at something.
Complain to Bart at dreamsaremadeofpodcasts@gmail.com.